heartfelt conversations can change the world. Here's the Epic Kate podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Epic Kate podcast. Is it pronounced Aubin?
It is pronounced Aubin. You got it.
Hello, Aubin. Lovely to meet you.
Hello, Epic Kate. How are you?
I am so tired. I have a 10-month-old baby who did not let me sleep last night.
And you're still recording a podcast with me.
Hey, it's fun, and it's something that I'm really excited to do is just meet people. Like, it gives me energy to meet people, to dive into these interesting conversations about like spirituality and transformative experiences. It just lights me up inside to hear that kind of thing. So I'm happy.
Well, I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Yay. So you are a rainbow magician. What the heck is that?
That's actually one of the reasons I named it that. Well, really, the primary reason I named it that is because that's what Source told me it was called when I asked them. It's called Rainbow Magic, and therefore I must be the Rainbow Magician. But the reason I like it from a little bit of an ego standpoint, is because when I say it, I can literally see the gears in people's heads grind to a halt. Like, what is that, right? And yeah, exactly. And so that's just the way I like it. And rainbow magic is what it actually is a spiritual modality that has been downloaded into my head specifically over the last 2 years. I had a spiritual awakening in 2021, which was a result of a culmination of all of my seeking and personal growth journey and all the stuff that I've done, which we can get into in a minute. But the long and short of it is that rainbow magic is a brand new color-based modality, rainbow because the colors are involved in the work. And it can do everything from upgrading the energy system. I have done some physical healings. I helped with a car accident, helped with some internal body stuff, a few UTIs here and there, sprained ankles, etc. I don't make a huge deal of that one because I don't want to appear like Jesus. I can't do loaves and fishes type miracles. That's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm here for. But rainbow magic does do some pretty profound things. The latest of which, the most sort of up to date recent, is that I can create different structures in the astral realm that have different purposes, and then I can send people into them for that purpose to be accomplished. So I have one for rest, for example. I have one for increasing productivity, making you feel motivated to get work done. I have one for physical healing, and I'm currently in the middle of working on one for abundance and money and those types of vibes. So the sort of latest is that I'm learning to be a spiritual engineer and architect, which is perfect because before I had this awakening, my previous life, if you will, was as an engineer, somebody who was highly technical. So I feel like it's a good match of where I came from and where I'm going to be able to do this sort of spiritual engineering, as I am kind of calling it these days.
Okay, I want to rewind way back and just find out, what was your spiritual life like? What was your spiritual understanding as a child of the world?
So I didn't grow up particularly spiritual. My parents weren't particularly religious. I mean, we went to church, but they didn't really push it. It wasn't a big theme or focus in our house or in our awareness. Basically, I think my mom wanted me to just get through confirmation as a sort of the first sort of showing of, okay, you're going to complete this thing for the sake of the completion of the doing of it, and then after you've done it, you can make whatever choice you want. And so actually growing up, I resented it. I didn't like church. I was very personally, I was very anti-God back then at that age, because for me, at least, it was a thing of, if there is a God, then why would he do this to me? See, the thing is that you can't see on camera is I have a physical handicap. And so I was born 6 weeks premature 42 years ago. I ran out of oxygen and I have a condition called cerebral palsy, which affects my mobility, my ability to walk. So grew up with a walker, all that stuff. And so as a kid, it was very much like anti-God, because it was like, if there is such a thing, then why would he do this to me? Like, why would that be a thing? Right? Now I know exactly why I have this body, and the journey of the becoming of the spirituality is much more interesting than where it started. But, growing up and like my spirituality was very like in high school, Kate, I used to be a militant atheist, is how I say it. So not only did I not believe in God, but I was gonna get in your face and tell you you were wrong if you told me you did, right? And so there's a very large gap between that angry 16-year-old kid and the 42-year-old rainbow magician. And the funniest part of the story is that, like, if you put me in a time machine and said, all right, Alvin, I need you to go back to 16-year-old self and tell him that in 25 years, 26 years, he's going to call himself a rainbow magician and be deeply spiritual. That kid not only would have told me to fuck off, but he would have literally done everything he could to prevent that from happening.
Mm. So, do you remember a point before choosing militant atheism? Did you ever just have an unexplainable thing happen?
Not at that age, and I think the reason why is because my belief system, what I know now about manifestation and belief systems and all of this, is that you truly do get the world you believe in. And literally back then, I was very rigid, very scientific. I am the byproduct of a hippie mother with all the English writing talent and an analytical, scientific, nerdy father. Right. And I'm the middle, the byproduct of both. And so growing up, I used to even fight with my mom a little bit about, like, she used to love like echinacea and homeopathic remedies and plants and, why go to the doctor if you can do it with something in your garden type vibes. And I was always like, Ma, there's no science behind that crap, like, so that's the thing. That's the way that I was. And I think the reason that I didn't have some of the miracles that I have now seen, and the reason that you make this shift, and the reason I think I made this shift, is because I have now seen with my own two eyes and felt and experienced some of those types of things. But it's because I'm now open to them. I'm now receptive to them. I'm now allowing of them. And in the growing up and in the becoming, there was very much, oh, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. If I can't measure it, it doesn't exist. If I can't, put, a scientific process over it, it doesn't exist. And so from that regard, I think the reason that I didn't have those experiences so much as a kid is because I literally did not believe in them.
So, what springboarded you into your spiritual awakening?
Well, so basically, just from a standpoint of learning and awareness and knowledge, I had all this knowledge, but I wasn't happy. Right? It's a very sort of common thing that I see in very smart people, is that all the knowledge in the world doesn't make you happy. Right? I figured out by the time I was 16, 15, 16, 18, 20, filled with all this rage, filled with all this, pain, like, all the IQ in the world doesn't say anything about happiness. So basically, what it really, I think, became was this sense of seeking for more. In other words, even when I got out of college at like 22 with my computer science degree, I already knew that I didn't really want to do it, but I had a computer science degree. So then I got the job, and then I ended up doing that for 10 years. And like, and hated most of it. And the very first part of personal growth that I ever really truly did was realizing that I didn't want to continue in my career. Realizing that, okay, Aubin, you hate this. Why are you doing it? Like, stop doing it. Stop doing this thing that you hate, right? And it was a really sort of big journey for me because at some very real sense, I actually had to learn to feel emotions, believe it or not. And the reason for that is because I had moved out of my body. I had completely disowned it as useful. I had decided that it didn't work and wasn't going to work. I had all kinds of deeply negative belief systems about this physical vessel in which I sit before you. And so as a result, I literally pulled my consciousness up to everything only sort of including the mind. I mean, I knew that the body was there, but I was very numb, very apathetic, very like not not somatically tapped into sensation or feeling or emotion. And so part of the growth, part of the journey of healing, part of the stuff that led up to the pop, if you will, the awakening that created rainbow magic was like literally learning the somatics of, okay, this is what a feeling feels like. This is what anger feels like. This is what apathy feels like. This is what, all these different things feel like. And then sitting with them with a process called the release technique or releasing or the Sedona method. They're all offshoots from the same teacher, ultimately guided either by David Hawkins or Lester Levinson, depending on who you ask. But the point is I went deep into feeling everything that I could feel for about 5 years. And then in the interim of that, I saw my life get better and better and better because there's this weird meditative practice when you learn the release technique or the Sedona method, when you learn to actually sit with your feels and just witness them and be with them without attaching to them or making it anything or attaching any judgment. It turns out they uncork, they kind of go away, they transmute, they shift. That's the point. The interesting truth that I know now that I didn't know then is that emotions are biochemical experiences that only last 90 to 120 seconds if we're present with them. If we're with them and allow them to be witnessed and allow them to be felt, they will be gone in 90 to 120 seconds. But what most people do is because of that, the not wanting to feel the thing in the 2 minutes that they have to sit with it, they push it away. They're like, not now, don't have time, don't have this, don't have, busy doing something, whatever. And then as soon as you do that, then it's embodied, and then it has to become something that you then have to actually go back to and bring up again and trigger and actually excavate, right? So I learned a lot about how the body stores emotions, about how to actually uncork that bottle and remove them. And as I remove the so-called heavier emotions, there is a little bit of truth empirically found in this idea of raising your vibration. It's like this kind of hypey thing that people talk about. Well, what does it actually mean? All it means in practice is feeling through all your so-called heavier emotions. We all know what they are: anger, sadness, fear, grief, apathy, and if you feel through them, eventually the vessel empties a little bit more, and some of the emotions that arise more spontaneously are peace or joy or equanimity or higher vibe emotions. And the truth of the matter is if you literally sit with your lower vibe ones and make a concerted effort to process through them, your vibration will raise by default, and then literally your life will change. And I saw that happen before my very eyes and was thankfully intelligent enough to connect some dots and be like, oh, this is how manifestation actually works. This is how, we set our pointer to something that brings us joy, and then we feel the joy of it, and the circumstances of the universe literally conspire to delight us. And so I've had some experiences of that in my life as well, and it just kind of snowballs on itself by now to where it's like, okay, I've seen so much cool stuff, I've done so much cool stuff that all of this must be possible. And that's where it all started, was sort of uncorking the emotional bottle and being with what I found inside it.
So let me ask you this. I love listening to this other podcast called Next Level Soul with Alex Ferrari, and he's always saying that. Let me ask you this. When did you hear a voice that you were like, that's not my voice, that's beyond me?
When the very first time, yeah, okay. So, so I had always kind of gotten intuitions and nudges and you know, had some sense that there was something bigger. And I think really the faith came in have you ever read the old book? It's actually out of print now, but called God Works Through Faith.
No.
It basically talks about how faith is the drive it faith and love, of course, but faith is also huge, and people don't necessarily like to engage in it unless they are religious. But faith doesn't have to be religious. Faith is an energy. It's a stop on the emotional scale. And but in order to have faith, you have to have faith in something larger than yourself. That's what having faith means. Having faith that something's going to go well for you, having faith that, there's some level of orchestration outside of you, etc. And so with the processing, with the connection to the emotional scale through Hawkins and through the Sedona method and all of that type of work, I started really getting curious about, well, how does faith actually work? How does this stuff happen? And gee, that's such a good question. When did I first hear the voice? Well, I had several experiences with energy healers and physical healers and kind of those types of people where the trust, like once they would have me stand up and be like, all right, I'm gonna take a few steps, and my walking would be completely different, and I would be like, okay, so clearly somebody moved some energy and it did a thing, so clearly that's real, right? And there was one time with a friend where she was like, get up, stand up, and ask God to help you, trust that there's something there. And at that time I had trouble with that word. The big G word was still had some, attachment on it and some pain. But I was at least at a point where I was willing to try. And basically it wasn't really a voice. I'm not exactly clairaudient. I guess the way I'd say it is the way that God interacts with me most primarily is through the sense that I spent all my years cultivating, which is my knowledge, my intelligence. There's a form of clair, which is called claircognizance, which is you just know stuff. It just sort of inserts itself into your head like any other thought that you've had. And usually the way I like to say it now, from having some more experience with working with it, my joke is that that's where all the good ideas come from. If I like the idea and it's a decent one and it's like, oh, where did that come from? And should I really say it to this person? Should I actually, like, it's usually a little bit of like Aubin wouldn't say that. So, should I really say it? And then if Aubin gets in the way, if the ego gets in the way a little bit, then I'll swallow it. But then usually what'll happen is if it's important enough for the person, it'll come back around. They'll bother me again. They'll go, say the thing, say the thing, say the thing. And then finally I'm like, all right, fine, I surrender. I'll say the thing. And then I say the thing. And then the person is like, how did you know that? Oh my God. So, just by now it's just trust. But I think part of it was in the actual events of the awakening. There was a tiny, tiny bit of substance involved. I'm a big fan of those type of substances for mental health these days and healing and all the exploration that humanity is doing into that. And so there were, those times. And I've also done a ton of meditation. And when I was in Thailand, I took myself to Thailand for a number of reasons. One of which was to run a web company, but the other of which is a beautiful place to be and meditate. And Chiang Mai happens to be on a ley line. And so I homebrewed my own Vipassana when I was in Thailand for 10 days, which is a silent meditation. They basically were like, you can do it on your own. You don't need to go anywhere. All you need to do is focus on this point here, right between called the philtrum. It's right under the nose. That's where you start the anahata. And if you focus there for long enough, eventually then what you do is you transition it into a body scan. And it was basically there that I started actually talking to God in a very real sense, and having a few of my first uh egoic deaths and breakdowns of the self, and then transitioning through. I wouldn't say, and I'm still sort of seeking, I wouldn't say I've had what's called a full awakening or a full unification with source. But I have definitely had what most people would probably refer to as several partial awakenings on the journey. I had one actually just recently, about 2 or 3 days ago. I'm currently reading the book I Am That by a famous yogi, an Indian yogi who came to the knowing of source, and then spent his life basically in his dwelling having people come and ask him questions. And then they recorded on tape a lot of the original Marathi, and then translated it to English and wrote the book. And so now what happens, an interesting part of where I am now, is when I come across something that needs to be integrated into my consciousness, it will just do it for me. The body knows, and the mind is prepared, knows what is well for me, and knows what is part of the journey, and knows what is part of the next steps of the evolution. And so it can be everything from reading a passage in a book, to music, to something somebody says to me about something, or a belief system that I still find, where I'm always sort of constantly examining how I am in the world and what's going on. And so it's been a really wild ride, but I'd say that the first time I ever talked to God was probably in Thailand in about 2018 or so.
Awesome. So I'm thinking about the people listening to this conversation and the spiritual journeys that people find themselves in when there's just so much out there, so many different paths to take. And I'm wondering what you could speak into how people can know, like, how people can take in what's meant for them. Like you were talking about integrating things in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the question makes sense. And to reflect it to you, I'll ask you, Kate, what's the best workout plan?
That's true. It's a pretty complex question, isn't it?
Well, I didn't mean it to be a complex question. There is actually an answer, and it is off the cuff and a little bit funny. But the answer to the question, I mean, would you like to volunteer? What's the best workout plan?
Get up off of the couch.
The best workout plan is the one you're going to do.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the content. Doesn't matter. Like it could be the most detailed workout plan or the simplest. Are you going to do it? Then it's a workout plan. If you're not going to do it, doesn't matter, right? And enlightenment is actually the same. There are so many different routes. There are so many different, like the guru in the book is about, deny all things but the I am, realize that nothing, the only truth is I am, and everything else is made up. And then there's, the Dalai Lama, who has never had a negative emotion in some ridiculous number of years, right? Like he is now only focused on peace and love, whereas Desmond Tutu's philosophy is you got to feel all of it, but you don't get to keep it. You don't have to hold on to it, but you do have to experience all of it. There are so many routes to enlightenment, and it's a good thing too, because if there was only one, we'd all be screwed.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many routes to enlightenment, and what I offer anybody listening is that the route to enlightenment is like the best workout plan. It's the one that interests you. It's the one that you're going to do. It's the one that you find intriguing enough to follow. Because the truth of the matter is I like to say I have the genetic birth defect of ADHD, which has a bunch of positive upsides when I manage to wrangle it, which is that when I find a healing modality that works for me, I ride it till the wheels fall off. So that's where the emotional stuff came in. The Sedona method, it came through a men's group called Fearless in Los Angeles, basically teaching men how to reconnect to their emotions and what that brings in life afterwards. And so I spent about 5 years with them. And then I found another piece called Mind Fix, which I basically spent I figured out that I needed to release all these emotions. So I spent 5 years figuring out how to do that at a really deep and powerful level. And then I realized that all these emotions kept coming back. I was like, what's that? At some point you get to these loops where you're like, hey, I let go of this a while ago and it's here again. What's with that? And so I got curious about, because it turns out there's something that actually creates the emotions, which is our belief systems and structures, right? And so when you can work with those at a very high level, you can actually change the emotions you have in a very real way. Because let's say you had the belief, I am afraid of black cats. Every time you see a black cat, you will feel fear. But if someone else has the belief black cats are cute and friendly and fuzzy, then they will experience happiness in seeing the same black cat. So I saw the connection between the creation of emotion. Hi, cat. That's hilarious. Could not be more perfect. What is that animal's name?
This animal's name is Kira.
Kira. Is she a she?
He's a fancy boy.
He's a he. Okay.
Oh, this is kind of special, unusual behavior. He must be hungry.
Well, what's funny, you say that, but animals love source consciousness, and I'm not going to toot my own horn, but just in empiric awareness, I have had so many animals show up in rainbow sessions that I figure it must be a thing. Like it literally has to be a thing that I'm bringing in a vibe. Because the thing is, animals are much closer to it than we are because they don't have nearly the mental process um of that separates them from it.
I love it. So, would now be a good point of the conversation for me to ask you what the circumstances were regarding your big download? For those,
Sure, yeah.
you're dropping so many buzzwords that I've heard all of them because I've listened extensively to podcasts, but it's like it could be a whole different language for people who don't know. So, and I love it. I love that there's like this code words, but for anybody who doesn't know and you're still around here, thanks for being here. A download, from what my understanding, is like the universe, source, God, whatever people want to call it, just puts a chunk of information inside of someone and they just know things. They know, like, sometimes a lot of things.
Yep.
Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, that's how it works for me. There are as many different ways, and just like enlightenment, there are as many different ways to be clair as there are senses, right? You can be claircognizant, you can be clairvoyant, you can be clairaudient, you can actually get intuition through the sense of smell. That's a little bit of a weird one, but it is actually a thing. And so I am primarily claircognizant, and so I was at a retreat doing some belief work through the belief system technology, the Mind Fix group that I was with, and the sort of the last cluster, if you will, which I didn't know was the last. You can never know these things going forward through them until they just happen. The sort of last cluster of beliefs that we removed was around I don't even remember them because they're gone. The method works so good that the belief statements are gone from your head once you pull them out. But the ethos of it was that it wasn't safe to be myself. That like I had created a whole awesome life, and I have, I've learned to walk, I worked at Google, I've done some amazing shit with my life. But the whole thing was I had created this whole awesome external life so that I didn't have to sit with myself, so that I didn't have to, it wasn't safe to be here in this vessel. And we found the belief system that was creating that. And so we removed like 4 or 5 beliefs in the span of half an hour. And the way I'll explain it, the only way I can explain it, is I finally felt so grounded, like so in my body, so here, so home, so moved into the vessel, that Source said, oh, he finally decided to live in the body we gave him. Cool. Now we can show him what he really wanted it for. And rainbow magic just kind of woke up.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's the thing that is just so heart filling. Is it's the woo woo world has such a wrong impression on so many people. Like, it's about the work. It's about the healing and getting past our traumas and our limiting beliefs. It's not like, ooh, now I'm going to put some rocks on my face. I don't know. It's really sad how scoffed at all of this is when there's so many results from it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the truth of it is again, back to sort of the thread of the best workout plan is the one you're going to do. I don't wish this journey on anybody who's not fully prepared, because it is not easy. This was not I did not sort of choose to become a rainbow magician. I was impelled by some level of nature that I did not know existed, right? I was compelled by a seeking, by a knowing that there was more out there for me than I had experienced, by a knowing that I couldn't, that I wasn't born to pay bills and die, that I didn't have, that I didn't have to do this job I didn't want to do, that something could shift, that my state could shift, that my awarenesses could shift. And there has been so much pain along the way, so much pain. And you have to be able to be willing to face it and bear it and go through it, because the journey, at least in my experience, has always, 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 always been worth it, because the gold is on the other side.
I want to go back to a thing when you had talked about rainbow magic earlier. Let me check. My cat made me lose my page. Okay. You about creating structures in the astral realm, because I have a friend, and I'd never heard about this concept before, but my friend had shared about how he had gotten this ability to create a structure to kind of protect a friend in her sleep. And
Yep.
like, you could see it and she could touch it. Like, that's just incredible. Is that like the kind of thing that people can do that you're working?
That's essentially it. Yeah, that's what I'm working on playing with these days. Yeah. I actually also have what I call sleep magic. I can do structures to help you sleep better. It's not so protection can be part of it, but it's actually creating environments that are more conducive to your personal sleep. So that's something that I play with sometimes for certain people.
Can you get my baby to sleep through the night?
Possibly, actually, because babies are much closer to source. So it might be possible. I've never actually tried on an infant. I would have to look into it, but it's entirely a possibility.
Oh man. What is it like to work with you? I guess I could ask.
Yeah, that is so we do a number of different things depending on what the person wants, but the ultimate, so at first it was just Rainbow Magic's evolution took me through the journey of knowing that it was real too. Rainbow Magic knew that I would need certain results along the way for the analytical brain of Aubin to be like, okay, you're not crazy. This is a real thing. This is and so at first it was just follow this particular energy. Everyone has a core central energy. And the one that I gave away in the very, like right after Rainbow Magic Cats at the same event, I gave the word fun. I walked over to my friend Peter and I said, Peter, your word of the year is fun. I have no idea why I'm guided to give this to you, but if you follow your fun for the next year, you'll have a much brighter life than you could have imagined. And it seems obvious, right? It's the high vibe. The fun is, fun is always fun, whatever. But I got lucky and it was a perfect manifestation to where he called me back 3 months later and said, hey, Aubin, every time I make the decision I think is going to be more fun, even if I think it's irresponsible, even if I think whatever, my life turns out in ways that I couldn't even have possibly imagined. I was like, cool, okay, I have something here. And then it became a thing where I could actually, get it into sessions that were an hour long and have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and kind of like going to a chiropractor or whatever. That was a growth journey in and of itself. To what does a rainbow session look like? They basically gave me an induction, a gift of how do I get a client into the rainbow space where I do the work. It's about the first, 5 to 7 minutes of my session. And then once we're up there, nowadays it started out with, well, what do you want? Because the reason it's called rainbow magic, another one, is that when I asked Source, what is this and what does it do? They said to me, it helps people find the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is different for every person, right? Your pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is different than mine. It's different than someone else's, etc. But the universe is large enough that we can all have that thing, right? So it's the question of how do you get there? So my second sort of milestone and breakthrough in rainbow magic was I was able to give sessions in it. And back then I was only seeing like a couple of colors and it wasn't as full as it is now. And, it hadn't fully hatched. But my friend Madeline came and she said, all right, Aubin, let's play. Let's see what you got here. I'd really like to have my person and I'd really like to have a baby. I haven't had much luck with relationships. And I would really like to start my family. And I said, okay, Madeline, let's see what rainbow magic can do. And I still remember the session to this day. They gave me 3 colors. They were pink, yellow, and green. The 3 energies were 3 C's: curiosity, compassion, and connection. And what we did is we actually downloaded, literally, I had a theory back then. I was like, okay, what if a manifestation is like a recipe for soup? Like if you go to make French onion soup, but you don't have onions, you're going to have a bad time. You just can't make the recipe that's required for what you want. And so I thought, what if manifestation is the same way? What if people are just missing a key energetic component here and there of the thing that they kind of want or mostly have down, but they don't have everything, and that's why they don't have the thing. And so I asked Source, I was like, okay, show me what those things are for Madeline. And they gave me curiosity, compassion, and connection. And I did an hour's worth of work where we actually moved them. We brought them from the top of her head all the way down through her root chakra. So rainbow magic works on the chakras, the 7 different energy centers in the body. And so I was able to, by the end of the session, I had a clean conduit. In other words, I was able to move those 3 energies down through the whole of her energy body down into the earth. And that was another piece of the theory, was we have to be the completed circuit between Source and Gaia, right? Gaia is the representation, the energetic representation of a physical planet. Source is everything above in the non-physical. We are the bridges between. We are the creators. We are the batteries. We are the connections between Source consciousness and Gaia, because we are the ones that move the energy from Source for the good idea, the vibration, the manifestation into the thing physically by creating it, And so how does that happen? It happens with a consistent conversation, a consistent loop, a consistent, harmonic field between Gaia and Source through us. And so then after I was able to help Madeline with some old pain and move stuff out of the way and get the energy moving through her and, basically make the energetic shifts that were necessary for her, she felt the energy running all the way into her feet. And I was inspired to give her a meditation. I said, all right, Madeline, here's a 7-minute meditation. It was bringing her into the rainbow space and then just letting her be. And I said, your practice is to run your colors. Your practice is to keep bringing down those 3 that we just gave you from Source into Earth over and over and over. She left me a testimonial not so much later that said, and I kid you not, 3 months after working with Aubin, we were married and had our first kid on the way. And there is a child in the world directly as a result of rainbow magic, because that was what was at the pot of gold at the end of her rainbow.
Wow. So I have this friend, and I've had her on my podcast as well. Her name is Raya. She can just see so much. She saw her soul when she's like doing her chakra work. She like can see the colors going to the chakras and stuff. Like, how do you sense where people's chakras are?
So it's really fascinating and yet also perfect for the way that I am. Being claircognizant, I'm not particularly clairvoyant. So this is the particularly interesting piece of polarity for a modality called rainbow magic. I don't actually see the colors. What I do, what I am, is the way that I'll put it is I know what the color purple feels like.
Oh.
And so what that does, and this is really the fascinating part of the journey, I know exactly why I'm in this particular vessel now, because what Source will do is Source will reflect the space in my body and the particular energy, the particular energetic like tuning that I need to give the person. So in other words, they'll be like, put some purple into her right hip, and I'll feel a sensation in my right hip that shows me where that is and what exact tune of purple they want, and etc. And then basically it's just a matter of stepping out of the way and telling them, yes, okay, go ahead, this is what I want. You know, having kind of the architect, the map, the where are we going type vibe, and then just sort of being like, okay, yes, do that, okay, next, do that. And so it's like a series of instructions on like a big scroll. You know how they spin the text in Star Wars?
Yeah.
That's kind of like what it is. It's like do this and then that and then like they'll have me. My sessions are wild because nowadays I believe in everything. So anybody within highest good, and when I set the container for the highest vibes can come play. So like we might be playing with your spirit team. We might be playing with ascended masters. We might be playing with an advanced race of beings like the Arcturians or the Lyrans or the Pleiadians. We play with a lot of color. Basically, anything that Source lets me know is the medium for you is fair game in a rainbow magic session these days, because it's not just about color. It's about, being open to the fact that it all exists if we believe in it on some very real level. Christ consciousness is a real thing. We could say whatever we want to say about the dogma of the books and the religions and the whatever, but there was something real about the man and what he could do and what he was connected to.
Mm.
So Christ consciousness is a real thing. And actually, hilariously enough, one of the ways that I truly learned that Christ consciousness was a real thing is because the Arcturians have a name for the human that was Jesus Christ.
Oh.
And when I realized that, I was like, okay, there's a there. There's some,
Oh, that is so cool.
yeah.
This before in my world before, I was with a Christian theater company. I was a missionary, and we
Mm,
did plays. We were
mm.
actors, and there was a play that we did where we were aliens, and we are looking at the earth, and I'm like, wow, what a beautiful planet. And what happened there? Oh, Jesus came, or the God came there. Like, oh, and what did they do to him? And oh, he was a king, of course, no, a carpenter. And what happened to him? Did he teach people? What he came to teach them about love and forgiveness? No, they killed him. They
They
must be
nailed him to a cross.
monsters. Like,
Yeah.
I've wanted to believe, and I do believe now, but before I couldn't. I couldn't believe in aliens and ghosts and whatever, and channeling. That's all evil. But I love the wonder and when people tell their stories, I listen and I believe them, and I take what it's meant for me to take, and I leave what doesn't resonate.
That's how I've always done it, is take what resonates and leave the rest. It's one of my favorite things. Um,
But that
you
just
know,
fills me with joy. Like other aliens out there, extraterrestrials, whatever is the politically correct thing to call them, um, having a name for the Christ consciousness. That's so cool.
yeah, I thought so when I found it. It's in a book called We the Arcturians. I forget her last name. Her first name is Norma. She was a professor at the University of New Mexico in the 80s and 90s, and channeled the whole book about, visiting with the Arcturians. And the reason I picked it up, and you will laugh at this, the reason that it resonated with me um, is because so once Rainbow Magic hatched, I did the thing I do, which is I took the ADHD and I was like, okay, this is real. So let's just, ride it till the wheels fall off. Let's study with spiritual teachers. Let's go. And I was at a 3-day event by a very, very well-aligned human. And it was made abundantly clear to me that one of my past lives was as an Arcturian. And that past life had a hand in creating the technology. Because at the time I thought of it kind of as a technology. I don't really anymore. But I kind of also like this version of the word magic. Have you ever heard Arthur C. Clarke's quote, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic"? So one of the reasons it's called rainbow magic is because if I took a lighter and flicked it, the Bic lighters that you can get at any 7-Eleven, and took it back to a caveman and stood in front of him and flicked the thing, he would think I was a god, right? He would think I was a lunatic,
Yeah.
right? And rainbow magic kind of does strike me a little bit the same way of sort of, it's just an advanced spiritual technology, an advanced spiritual gift that we don't understand the scientific particulars of. And from that, I'm able to do magic in all senses of the word, but it's really just because we don't understand the particulars of non-local consciousness and quantum mechanics and entanglement and all this stuff.
And I love, in the last 20 years or so much more science has come on board, that there's so many things that people were scoffed at before that they just can't deny anymore, like the reality of existence after death.
Yeah, and like the heart coherence field. And so one of the books I have on my list is The Journey of the Soul, and talking about how reincarnation actually works, and things like life review and what happens in the astral after we die. And yeah, it's a fascinating fun.
I've listened to so many near-death experiences and things like that, so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm right there. I feel like this is a really good place to kind of wrap things up. Is there anything else you'd like to add, and one more happy thought? And of course, we will put all the ways that people can connect with you and links, whatever you have to give me, into the description.
I mean, I guess the sort of core message of rainbow magic is that there's always hope and inspiration. There's always, if somebody like me with this twisted body and this physical handicap and this whole hating God and all the anger that I started with can make this transition into a place where he not only fully believes in all this stuff, but is supported by it, has it do miracles through him and for him and serve people and become more of what it's meant to be on the planet, almost without his own input at this point. I feel like rainbow magic is kind of living me, if you will. It sort of tells me what it wants, and then I go execute it as a faithful servant of source and God and all the things.
Is it like you're channeling? Is it like rainbow magic is a consciousness that you're channeling, kind of?
And it is actually, that's what I'm learning for my friends on this planet who are entrepreneurs. I'm piloting another sort of offering where we actually connect you to the energetic entities of your businesses, chakra to chakra, and start a dialogue that way and ask the business what it wants. Because the truth is that any entity on the planet has a representation in the astral. So if you have a business, if you have a family, if you have a community group you're part of, all of these things have representations in the astral, and therefore they all have a highest good, if you will. They all have a striving between where they are on Earth and where they could be, where they choose to be, where they are guiding themselves to. And from that, you can actually step the individual humans out of the way and ask the entity what it wants. And then you just sort of, okay, if that's what you say you want, we will be your faithful servants who execute it in the 3D on the Earth. And
even this podcast or my vlog channel, how would
you can connect to anything that exists here on Earth and ask for the energy of it and ask what it would like, what it would want, what it would prefer. Because all these things are essentially imbued with our life force. The blog channel, the podcast, even the technology truly is imbued with life force of the humans that work on it, essentially. And therefore it has consciousness, and consciousness travels through it. One of the trippiest things that I ever discovered in the becoming of the rainbow magician that I currently am is that they were like, you need to get rainbow magic onto the internet. And I said, okay, I'll start, posting on social media and all this stuff. And they were like, no, the real internet. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, go outside, take your shoes off, put your feet in the grass, and look down. So I did. And I looked down, and there were little mushrooms all over the place. And I was like, what are these little mushrooms? And they said, the internet. The earth is alive with a mycelial network called mushroom fungi that transmit, there's also trees and roots and all the other ways of transmitting information. The earth actually has like about 3 or 4 internets, because the dolphins provide one, the whales provide one, et cetera, et cetera. But the long and short of it is that they were like, you need to put rainbow magic onto the internet, please. And I was like, okay, I get that. I can do that. That's easy.
So you just grounded yourself and
basically, yeah. I go and I sit. I do this fairly often. I go and I sit outside and ground, and actually, connect with Gaia and send her rainbow magic into all the different pieces and places and things that she would like it.
There are so many mushrooms here right now. Like Gotland I live on an island of Sweden called Gotland. Mushrooms everywhere, raining all the time. So
yeah,
this is really cool.
Mushrooms live everywhere, and there's a reason for that. That is one of the ways that the earth.
Mushrooms that my YouTube channels would really like some more subscribers.
Well, ask your YouTube channels what they want first, and then tell your mushrooms that. I mean, I assume so, but you never know until you ask the question. Maybe they're like, hey, Katie, we want you to announce us at your next book club, or hey, we want you to announce us at work, or hey, we want you to announce us at some other event. Maybe that's what they want first.
My problem is I just don't know how to hear. But
you do, you just don't know that you know.
Well, this has been wonderful. I feel like we could just talk forever and ever and ever.
We probably could, but in the interest of wrapping, reasonably in an hour and not, spending 3 hours of the listener's life, I suppose we could probably wrap the conversation.
Thank you for this wonderful time. There's so much to think about and munch on, and I'm going to just get even more out of it the next time I listen through when I'm editing. I don't really edit much because it's just like I don't have the energy for it. I mostly just listen through and just, yeah. So anyway, the way that I end my conversations is I give hugs.
Aww, virtual hug, my friend.
Virtual hugs. Yay. Thank you, and I hope that we will talk again soon.
We will indeed.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.
I'm so glad you're still here. Please like this video, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe. Bye.